Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
Today we're showing you our new project, or rather the beginnings of it. These are the boxes we've got in, ready to paint and assemble, paint and base up, and it's going to be a real big one. We held off doing this project properly. We got some Russians a while back, but there's some Dance Vault Russians, some Fireforge, and we only did one box up, and we never really got around to doing anything else with it because we were waiting for the new boxes to come out, and now they're finally out. We have Mongols, which are the guys at the back, and the best are the Scandinavian infantry, which have only just come out very recently, and we had them on order and they've only just arrived. So now we're actually going to start it as a project, so it's going to be fun. So we're going to be doing the Northern Crusades and the sort of battles around Russia and Eastern Europe during the medieval period, 12th to mid-12th century to mid-13th century, basically, 1300s. Sorry. So what was the Northern Crusades?
It was the Crusaders' invasion of Russia.
The Crusaders' invasion of Russia. Why did the Crusaders invade Russia?
Because Russia wasn't... Because Russia didn't help us during the Crusades?
Of course they did. Russia sent just as much support to the Byzantines than the Europeans did. Whenever Europe becomes one whole sort of allied state, it tends to invade Russia. Because Russia's there, it's on the border. Russia trades with everybody, and Russia was just not controllable by the church. And at the time, the Pope was effectively the emperor of Europe. Although there were lots of independent countries, the Pope had the last say on who became king and how the countries were run. Russia, on the other hand, didn't pay any attention to the Pope whatsoever. They weren't interested because the Pope was over there in either France or Italy, depending on where he was hiding at the time, and Russia just had no interest in it. So they invaded Russia. The Christian armies invaded Russia. That being said, there's lots of other stuff going on in this period. The Mongols invaded Russia from the east, the Islamic armies invaded Russia from the south, and the Christian armies invaded Russia from the north and from the west. So Russia was, well, the Russian word for peace translates as not currently being invaded. Because Russia is surrounded by people who constantly invade it. So Russia was kind of piggy in the middle during the Middle Ages. In fact, always has been, but certainly during the medieval period, Russia was in serious trouble, and it wasn't a country at the time. It was merely a number of independent city-states. And because of the Northern Crusades, Alexander Nevsky managed to unite the different Russian states into one country and created the country we now call Russia. The Northern Crusades itself I will go into later in other videos because it's really long and complex. Simply enough, there was an attempt by mainly the Germans and the Scandinavians to sort of take over the Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, all the Baltic states, Finland, and the northern bit of Russia in order to turn it into a Christian kingdom. Although many people there were already Christian, technically many of them were also pagans, and they weren't allied to the church. On the other side, the Germans, they annexed Prussia because Prussia was a Slavic kingdom, not a German kingdom. And even today, in the Constitution of Germany, which I found out the other day, which is interesting, in the original Constitution of Germany written in the 1800s, it says Germany is a nation of Germanic states and one Slavic nation, which is Prussia, which is interesting because I always thought the Prussians were the sort of, I don't know, typical Germans, but they're not. They're actually descended from the Slavs. So it was a really long, complicated war, and a lot of really stupid stuff happened, which was quite fun if we're going to be doing games and stuff around it, because there's a lot of interesting things that went on. So, any questions before I go through the boxes?
No.
No? No questions at all?
No.
It's a new project and you haven't got a single question.
No, because I don't know much about it.
Well, I've already told you quite a bit about it, and if you ever pay attention, you don't pay attention, do you?
I don't really like the Northern Crusade, so no.
Why don't you like Northern Crusade?
Because the Russians won.
Well, no, technically the Russians didn't win. Now, Russians ended up with Russia, but the Baltic states ended up being Christian, or at least not Russian, not under Russian control. And yeah, it was a bit of to and fro. So I'll go through the boxes. In the middle, at the back, you can see standing up, you can see 4 boxes of Mongols. Mongols technically, militarily, didn't take part in the Northern Crusade. They did, however, invade Russia. They also did a lot of fighting in Russia as well, and some Mongol units served on the side of the Russians for complex reasons, which is complex. Effectively, Russia was a vassal state of the Mongol Empire. It was invaded by Mongolia. An attempt by the Mongolians to invade Europe. They defeated a Teutonic army which was attempting to stop them. However, the Khan at the time died, and so the Mongol armies had to withdraw back into Russia for winter, where they sort of stayed in Russian cities because it was quite cold, and they had to withdraw their armies from Europe. And the new Khan, when he took power, he wasn't interested in Europe. He wanted to go east, south, from the Mongol position. So the Mongols never invaded Europe after that. But pretty much the Mongols were in a position to overrun the whole of Europe had the new Khan, either the old Khan not died or the new Khan been interested in invading Europe, then the Mongols would probably have overrun Europe at that point. So it was a bit of a sticky wicket for the Europeans. Most of their military forces were deployed in the east at the time because they were defending the Crusader states, which were being overrun. And they were sort of the best military fighting men. And there wasn't anything else to really stop the Mongols at that point. So that was lucky. So that's the Mongols. I've got two boxes of Fireforge Mongol steppe warriors and 2 boxes of Fireforge Mongol cavalry. So they're going to be good to do. Sorry, I've got a terrible throat. I haven't been able to speak for the last week. Then we have a box of Teutonic Knights. Sorry, 2 boxes of Teutonic Knights. They're from Fireforge as well. And we have 2 boxes of Teutonic foot infantry, which are these chaps here, the Teutonic Knights, the ones at the back. They're for the Teutons, but I am also using them for the Livonian Brotherhood of the Sword, which were a crusading order based in Riga, in Latvia, and they basically almost got destroyed, and so they became part of the Teutonic Order in order to save the Holy Order. That they moved into the Teutonic Order, but even though they were in the Teutonic Order, they maintained their own uniforms and their own command and control, although they didn't have their independent Grand Master. So, but that's all politics. Then we've got some mounted sergeants and some sergeants at arms. The sergeants at arms here I got not to use as crusading troops, but to use as Scandinavian infantry, mainly because there weren't that many sergeants at arms in the real world. If you're doing Hail Caesar with this, 1 unit would represent the sergeants at arms, and that would be too big. The sergeants at arms units were very, very small. In fact, knight units were very small, so I decided to use those for the Scandinavians. We've got 3 boxes of Scandinavians. The Russians, these are Norman cavalry. We've done a video on these before, but I'm using them as Russian, and I will show you what I've done with those later. And some Dark Age warriors to be local Latvian civilians or Latvian militia or Russian militia, Russian civilians armed with weapons, because we're going to be doing a lot of campaigning in that region. Then we've got some medieval archers, which we've also already done a video on, and then the normal foot sergeants. So that's an overall. Oh, last but not least, Templar infantry. You can see the Templars at the far side. We've got 2 units, 2 boxes of Templar cavalry and 2 boxes of Templar infantry. So you will be seeing those as well. We're going to be going into more detail on everything as we do it. I'm going to be finishing the Russians first, because we've already started on the Russians, and then we're going to do the Livonian Order and work up from there. So if anyone has any ideas, then please let us know if you've got any ideas on the project. And over to the sidekick for any questions.
Will we be using like half of these? Which ones are on the knights? Which ones will be on the knight side? Because the Mongols are going to be on their own. The Russians are going to be on their own with the
You can use Mongols as Russian allies.
So will the Templars be with the Teutonics?
Yes.
And what about the foot sergeants?
Well, all the Holy Order Knights were on the same side.
Right. Like Scandinavian.
The Scandinavians are a bit complicated. The Scandinavians, the Danes, were it was really between Denmark and Sweden. They were the 2 Scandinavian military powers. Denmark had a considerable amount of territory, and they were allied to the Livonian Order, who became part of the Teutonic Order. So the Danes would be fighting on the side of the Livonians, or rather the Livonians would be fighting on the side of the Danes. The Swedes, however, they were after the northern territories of Russia. They were after Finland and Latvia, the northern bit of coast above where the Livonians held at the time. And so the Swedes were after that territory there. Later on, due to constant wars between between Sweden and Denmark, they eventually became the same kingdom. 2 separate kingdoms with only 1 queen, which was a way to stop them from fighting each other. But that happened later. So, for the purposes of most of the games we'll be playing, the Scandinavians would be on the same side as the Holy Order Knights, although it wasn't always the case. There were instances where they came to blows.
Right.
Next question?
Who are going to be with the Russians?
Hmm?
Who are going to be with the Russians?
The Russians are pretty much on their own.
Okay.
They're pretty much on their own. Local Mongol forces who were in the area would aid Russian forces, but it really depended on the local Mongol commander, because often the Mongols would just sit at the side and watch and not take part, because they didn't consider it any of their business. If 2 different groups of people were fighting each other and they weren't at war with the Mongols, they weren't really bothered. However, because Russia became a vassal state of the Mongol Empire, technically the Russians, because they were paying a huge amount of gold every 4 years to the Mongols, no taxation without representation, the Mongols were theoretically should aid the Russians, because the Russians are paying protection money.
Well, I'll be playing the Knights, you're going to be playing the Russians.
Yes, I'm going to be playing the Russians and you're going to be playing the Holy Orders.
And I'm going to win.
You're going to win? Yeah. Okay. I'd like to see you win. So, any questions? Is that it? That's
yeah.
Right, thank you very much for watching then. Over to you for the outro.
So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and
you got the same jobs as me.
And please, what was that?
Subscribe.
And comment down below what you think of our new project. That's anything from us. And we said
That's not what we say. It's everything from me and everything from you.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.